Good afternoon. It's Monday, everyone. I'm Leanne Young here in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. I've got your top stories from around our region. Provincial and federal ministers announced a unified task force to address forestry sector concerns. This comes after an emergency meeting that happened just this morning in BC as the province's softwood lumber industry has taken a blow from the Canada-U.S. trade war.
We are going to remain unified and together on communications, on strategy, so that British Columbians and Canadians know that the federal government and the provincial government are in their corner, are standing up for them, and are speaking with one voice on this.
Eby says he is confident coming out of the meeting that the federal government is taking softwood lumber issue as seriously as it deserves. Along with Eby, Dominic LeBlanc, the federal minister for Canada-U.S. trade, and other ministers spoke to media this morning. The task force will aim to keep the issue of softwood lumber high on the agenda. Eby also said they're looking to fast-track applications for funding support, and the BC government will not be airing its anti-tariff ad in the U.S. This all comes as concerns grow over the impacts of increasing American fees and tariffs on softwood lumber. The province says the summit is intended to secure more federal help for an industry that employs tens of thousands of workers here in BC. And the BC Coroner Service says 158 people died in September due to toxic drug deaths. It says nearly 70% of the deaths were people between the ages of 30 and 59, and almost 80% of them were male. It also adds that the highest number of deaths happened in the Fraser and Vancouver coastal health regions. More than 5 people a day are dying still due to toxic drugs. And yet another call for action on extortion has come from Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke. She sent letters to the province and federal governments asking for 150 temporary police officers to deal with what she has called a public safety crisis. A former Surrey MLA told the Early Edition this morning that she is hearing from community members who are scared and feel like they are not being protected by police.
First, the police were saying there were not enough people coming forward. But people are coming forward now. But people who are coming forward now are not feeling that they are getting the kind of protection they need.
Sims hosts a morning radio show in Surrey. Her station, Swift 1200 AM, was also the target of an extortion-related shooting about a month ago. Well, avian flu has been detected at a poultry farm in Salmon Arm. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the discovery was made on Saturday. There is no word yet on the number of birds infected. Province-wide, there are 15 locations affected by avian flu. And the city of North Vancouver is set to build its first outdoor swimming pool. The floating swimming platform will house a saltwater pool, swimming lanes, and lounging areas. The location will just be a 5-minute walk north of the Seabus terminal at Lonsdale Quay. And good news for residents, it's expected to be free and can accommodate up to 400 people at a time. But it won't be built, unfortunately, until 2027. But it is slated to happen, so that is good news. All right, that's it for me for now. You are watching CBC News BC on CBC Gem on YouTube and on our website. I'm Leanne Young. Thanks for watching this morning. Much more local coverage to come. BC Today with Michelle Elliott coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. BC will not run anti-tariff ads in the United States. That's from Premier David Eby this morning at a softwood summit aimed at finding supports for the industry. We'll talk to the Forest Products Association up first. And we're asking you, are you satisfied with what's being done for forestry? And it was a World Series full of highs and heartbreak. BC poet Shane Coyson has penned a poem to the Toronto Blue Jays, calling it good sport. We'll hear that at 12:55. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Well, back in August, Prime Minister Mark Carney went to a mill in Kelowna to pledge a $1.2 billion package for the forest industry. That's been hit hard by U.S. trade penalties. In the wake of that, the U.S. ramped up tariffs by 10% last month, bringing total duties and penalties to 45%. Well, Premier David Eby has been critical of what he saw as an unfair focus of aid on other sectors like steel and aluminum. Well, today, Eby and federal ministers announced a task force to come up with supports for the sector. And Eby also said BC would not go ahead with running planned anti-tariff ads for the U.S.
On the advertisements, we've committed to the federal government that when the time comes to be speaking directly to Americans, we'll do it in partnership with them. We will not be running the ads by ourselves. We'll make sure that we're in line with strategy going forward. And that is a recognition on our part of the efforts that were made today around the table for us to work together as a team, integrated provincial and federal government with our table, focusing on the future of the industry, how we reduce our dependence on the United States, and the present of the industry, how we support those workers and businesses to be able to survive and ultimately to thrive in a new environment.
That's Premier David Eby speaking at an urgent, they called it urgent, softwood lumber summit today in Vancouver. We are taking your calls. Are you satisfied with what's being done for forestry? And how can the industry come out of this challenge intact? You can call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment on our TikTok. Derek Nighbor is President and CEO of the Forest Products Association of Canada. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I apologize for the backdrop here. I'm just heading into a House of Commons committee appearance, so it's not ideal.
Fair enough, and I completely understand that it's a busy day. Tell me about your reaction, first of all, to BC not running these ads that were slated to run in the United States, that were to be critical of tariffs and focused on softwood lumber.
Yeah, it's the right call at this time. I think to move forward with those ads would have just inflamed things further, and that's the last thing we need right now as we try to get back to some good faith negotiating between Canada and the U.S.
He also said, Premier Eby, that he is much more confident today that the federal government sees the severity of what the sector is facing. That, though, is after weeks of expressing frustration about what he saw as lack of urgency. Where do you stand? Do you share the new optimism, or do you share that frustration he previously expressed?
Well, I think we were frustrated as well, similar to the Premier. I think we heading into the Prime Minister's last meeting in the White House, it was pretty clear that lumber was in the same sentence as steel, aluminum, energy, and autos. And coming out of that meeting, we weren't any longer. And that put us in a tough position. We're trying to maintain a Team Canada approach here. But when you don't know where you stand, we have an obligation to stand up for our employees and our businesses and our forestry communities. And we had to say, what's going on? What about lumber? I think the Premier was on the record. Our union partners were on the record out of concern. And I think since then, we've seen a little bit of a reset with the federal government, which is really, really important.
How would you describe, what tells you that there's a reset? If you were to break down what was announced today, there's a task force that will work together to come up with supports and solutions for forestry. Premier Eby commented that he's been assured that the loan guarantees, $700 million worth for forest companies, are now being rolled out by the Business Development Bank of Canada. So essentially an update on something previously announced and a new task force. So where do you get that? I guess that confidence, is that substantive enough for you?
Well, let's see what the task force does. We don't have a lot of time here. We're probably across the country closing in on 2,000 lost jobs. With every passing day, more jobs are at risk. So this needs to be a task force that moves with purpose and with some speed. And I know, the government can count on industry. And I just met with colleagues from Unifor, the union, earlier today. There's a lot of momentum. I don't think we as an industry working with labor partners have ever been more united from coast to coast. So I welcome the task force, but let's move with some urgency here. We don't have time to deliberate for weeks and months on end. We have a good idea about some of the measures that can be taken to protect the sector, to protect workers, and we got to get on with it.
What are some of those measures you'd like to see?
Well, a couple of things. I think industry and labor can be helpful to negotiators in terms of how to come to the table to make lumber, a deal on lumber, look more attractive to Americans. Americans need housing. They need Canadian lumber to help build that housing. So that's one area. The other area is creative financial supports. I think the federal package that was rolled out, the BDC money, as you said, is just started rolling out, or the program just went live on the website this weekend. We'll have to see how quickly that money flows. We don't have a lot of time for bureaucracy here. Workers and businesses who need the money need to be able to get that money quickly. So we'll monitor the process and the progress of that. And also the worker supports that are in place, we don't believe they extend to contractors. Often, it is our mechanics, our truck drivers, our logging contractors who are very hard hit in addition to full-time employees in the sector. So we'll want to see our contractors protected as well. And we need to make sure the supports are robust enough. The package the government announced, $50 million to support workers, was calculated to support 6,000 workers. We're already at about 2,000 jobs indefinitely or temporarily off. So we need to make sure, we need to get working today to make sure if this thing drags out, that our people are going to be protected.
My guest is David Nighbor, President and CEO of the Forest Products Association of Canada. Again, we are taking your calls in light of this softwood summit that took place in Vancouver today. And coming out of that, the Premier David Eby announcing a new task force that will look at supports for the industry. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc also here for that announcement. And so we're asking you, do you think enough is being done for the industry, and how can it come out of this challenge intact? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. And Derek, you mentioned negotiations, which are not taking place right now. They were scrapped by the U.S. After the Ontario anti-tariff ad. So what do you think needs to happen on that front? How urgent is it that they get to talking again?
Yeah, it's key. We are unlike some other sectors that have other opportunities. It's not cheap to ship lumber, and we sell about $8 billion of it a year to the United States. So we're all for domestic use of wood. There's going to be incremental opportunity there. Export market diversification is a big play, but in the near term, there's no quick way to move away from $8 billion of lumber sold to the U.S. every year. So getting to some kind of normalized trading agreement with the U.S. starts with getting back to the table, and we'd like to see that happening as soon as possible. I think we've also seen there's been a lot of talk about the Americans and the president moving to try to do this for domestic industry. Well, since 2017, U.S. production satisfying its own market has stayed pretty flat at around 70%. We've lost a 6% share during that same period, and we've lost all of that to the Europeans. So the Americans have been replacing Canadian wood, not with American lumber, but with lumber from Scandinavia and Austria. And how that's in the best interest of shared prosperity and security and economic growth for North America is beyond me. So I think these are some of the factors. Americans do want our wood, but getting to some degree of normalized trade with the U.S. starts with getting back to the table.
They still do argue that Canada is dumping wood in the United States and pushing out their own domestic producers. Today, in time for the summit, the U.S. Lumber Coalition issued its own statement saying Canada should be discussing how to reasonably reduce its massive 6 to 8 billion board feet of excess lumber capacity. instead of holding this summit. And it also went on to say Canada should reverse its massive lumber subsidy programs and stop treating the U.S. market as a dumping ground for Canadian lumber. What is your response to that? You know, it's the result of, or I guess part of really a decades-long dispute.
Yeah, well, listen, the U.S. Softwood Lumber Coalition has a master's degree in creative writing. I think we've continued to see these kind of messages from them. And the history is this is our fifth lumber major dispute that we've been in through since the beginning of time. And every single time, Canada has found to be on the right side of the law in that regard. So those are just that's just more bluster and more speaking points, which is pretty predictable from the source.
And you talked about Canada essentially still needing the United States, despite the efforts to find domestic markets or to diversify our markets. So it sounds like it's not an option to try and decouple or deintegrate, at least on forestry, from the U.S.
Yeah, it's going to be a longer burn to do that. You know, today we sell about $28 billion worth of, you know, wood products beyond lumber, including pulp and paper, engineered wood, other products to the United States. The next nearest market after that is China, just under $4 billion. And then you have Japan at about $1 billion. So, you know, we built, similar to the auto industry, we built very integrated supply chains. Our, you know, trains and trucking systems moving north-south, decades of relationships with our partners south of the border. So this has been massively disruptive. And of course, I think it's important, you know, Minister Robertson was at the meetings today to look at what more can we do here at home? What more can we do in other markets? But we have to understand that that's going to be incremental growth, and it's not just going to offset, you know, $8 billion in lumber every year. And I think the other advice I'd have for those who were at the summit today, and we shared this information with them before the meeting happened, let's also control the controllable here. You know, the stories I'm hearing from our ecologists and our foresters, where a government of BC truck and a government of Canada truck are at the same culvert, one saying, yeah, this is good, the other one saying, well, wait a second. You know, that kind of regulatory overlap and duplication, these are unforced errors right now in as we try to rebuild our economy here in Canada. So, you know, when it comes to accessing the wood supply, predictable access, I think both the federal and provincial governments also need to look in the mirror here to say, okay, listen, what can we do reasonably on the policy, on the regulatory side that's going to uphold our world-leading environmental reputation? Canada's well regarded globally because of how well we manage our forests. How can we do this in a way that's going to make us more competitive and not add more costs at a time when we can ill afford it? So I think that's a big takeaway. I think both governments need to have a long, hard look in the mirror to say, okay, what more can we do to be creative here on the stuff we do control to try to take some costs out of the system and improve competitiveness and get some confidence back in our market.
Derek Nighbor, I appreciate your time, and I know that you do have to go. It is a busy day. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Derek Nighbor is President and CEO of the Forest Products Association of Canada. We reached him in Ottawa. It is 12:19 now. Well, BC Premier David Eby has long pressed the federal government to treat BC's forestry sector with that same urgency as steel and automotive industries in Ontario and Quebec. This morning, though, he said he was rest assured that lumber is a priority, but he made clear his frustration getting the Fed's attention to forestry.
I'll be blunt. It has been incredibly difficult to hear that the topics being discussed with the United States are energy, aluminum, and steel. These are core industries, and I don't want to take anything away from other provinces where they are core industries, but they're core industries of other provinces. And we have an aluminum smelter, but with some support, they can quickly pivot to international markets. For us, it's the softwood sector. And softwood is to British Columbia as auto parts and steel are to Quebec and Ontario. And just hearing again and again that those were the topics being discussed federally with the Americans was challenging. I think that as of today, I feel much more confident. The federal government understands the severity of the crisis facing the sector, the impact of the industry across the province and across the country, and the need to be more involved. I feel that we're on the same team now, pushing forward.
That's more from Premier David Eby this morning at that Softwood Summit. And we are asking you, do you think that enough is being done? Are you satisfied about what's being done to address the struggles of the forest industry amid these tariffs amounting to now 45%, U.S. tariffs and penalties? And we're asking you as well, how do you think the industry can come through this intact? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And you can also just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Greg is calling us now from Victoria. Hi, Greg. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What's your sense? What do you make of what's being done, and is it enough?
I'm not in the industry, but there's some very smart people on this channel. But I decided to call in because my daughter convinced me, my 9-year-old, to get a hamster, and I told her, I'll get you a gray cage, but you have to build it. And she went to the lumberyard and took all the waste. You know those little dividers that go between all the, I think they're called slats or dividers between the stacks of wood?
Sure, yeah.
And she created a jungle gym as a 9-year-old, and it was so impressive. And she's like, Dad, can I sell these? I'm like, yeah, it's waste. It's free. So I guess that's my comment. Can we engage the youth and entrepreneurs to look at the industry and the byproducts and do something with it, not just export logs? If my 9-year-old came up with a good idea, imagine if we just expose the industry to some smart kids and universities and let them go.
I appreciate
really all I had to call for.
Smart 9-year-old there.
I was like, I got a business. Let's do it. I'm like, wow, there is a lot of waste.
It's an argument that we've heard as well, right? That not enough is being done when it comes to producing value-added products.
Yep.
When it comes to the industry. And you're in manufacturing, are you, Greg?
No, yeah. I used to be in manufacturing, so I always looked at the byproduct manufacturing and byproducts and all the leftover stuff. Never dealt in wood, but there's always a byproduct to everything you make, and it goes to the waste. But when it comes to the lumber industry, it's wood. So my daughter went to the lumberyard and got a whole bunch of slats and created a jungle gym. She wants to go create chew toys, and she's done research and the byproduct and the waste. Maybe there's something we can do with it.
Yeah. Future builder, future engineer in the house there for you. Entrepreneur. Greg, thank you very much for the call. Appreciate it. Our numbers again are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We are also slated to touch base with the mayor of Port McNeill in a few minutes. Right now, Barbara is calling us from Gold River. Hi, Barbara. Thanks for joining us. And you work in the forest industry.
Yes, I've just recently retired, actually. But that's because of the fact that there's nothing going on here on the island. There's only one person that seems to have the plot and the permission to cut the trees down, and everybody else has seemed to have gone by the wayside. So I'm just wondering why Cypress Creek on the island is the only one that's allowed to cut down trees.
Okay, so it's about land use for you then?
Well, it's really about why is there only one person that's allowed to get the permits?
Okay. And so do you agree then with what we heard from the Forest Products Association as he was leaving there, that there are regulatory restrictions that kind of come in the way of the industry performing better?
I can't really comment on that. No, I can't.
Okay.
Don't know enough to comment on it.
Yeah.
But I just find it interesting that everybody goes to Kelowna when they talk about the forest industry, where Vancouver Island and the coast is a little bit more getting almost pushed out, if you could say that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, when it comes to supports, and certainly we're going to hear from the Port McNeill mayor about what she's looking for her island community as well. Can you tell me a bit, though? You said that you retired because of the slowdown?
Well, yes. I had been laid off for a couple of years. And then they said, oh, well, we're going to work for another 3 months. But, I mean, it's 3 months, and then what? and then and the rest of the year is not there for anybody. And I mean, there's a lot of people here on the coast that have been actually kind of pushed out because that's what they've done all their life. And you live in a small community. There's not a lot to do.
What impact has...
I mean, and then you have to drive forever to get a job, and then there's no jobs anywhere.
Yeah.
And this community was based on the logging industry. And we had mills, and then now we've shut down the mills. And then those people are out of employed. And then, you've got the shake blocks. And, there's a lot of things that is just incredible. But they still keep cutting down the forest. They're just not using local talent.
Wow,
I guess
Barbara.
is what my frustration.
Yeah, I hear it, and I can understand, you're watching the impact it's having on your community. What is it like now in Gold River?
Well, it's sad because we don't have a mill anymore. We don't have a dryland sort that's working anymore. We don't have a superstore. Or a super value or a food store. We don't have a bank anymore. They brought... There's nothing for people to come and earn a living, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing anymore. They've cut Tas's the same thing. There used to be a mill there, and we're shipping our logs out raw instead of having them milled and employing the community.
Barbara, it's really good to hear from you. Really glad you called. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for letting me blab.
It's good to hear, very, very good to hear your perspective, Barbara, someone who's just retired from the forest industry in Gold River. Our number again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We are asking you, are you satisfied with what's being done for the forest industry, and how can the industry come out of this intact? Today, Premier David Eby and Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, as well as other federal ministers, were in Vancouver for a softwood summit, and they came out of it saying there's going to be a task force looking at supports for the forest industry. This comes, of course, after an aid package that the federal government announced back in August. And some of that, Premier Eby said, is starting to roll out now. These were loans, $700 million worth of loans that are now starting to roll out. And Premier Eby, after weeks of expressing frustration that forestry wasn't getting enough attention from the federal government, the same as other industries that would be more based or concentrated in Ontario. He says today that he has that confidence, so much so that he also said that today the ads that were to be running in the U.S., scheduled for this month, and they were anti-tariff ads. They were focused on softwood lumber. They will not run. And Premier Eby said he's confident that now he feels that the federal government and the province are on the same page, working together as partners on forestry. And he wanted to have more of a coordinated effort and more communication between the federal government and the province on that front when it came to communicating with the United States. We'll continue to take more of your calls on this, asking you, are you satisfied with what you're hearing, or with what's being done for forestry? And how can the industry come out of this intact? We just heard from a resident of Gold River who's just retired from forestry as well. Our number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. A lot of calls on deck coming up. Conrad in Princeton, Casey in Furney, and Renee in Victoria. We will get to you right after the CBC News update. And we will We're trying to connect as well with the mayor of Port McNeill on this. And coming up at 12:55, we will touch on that heartbreaking loss in Game 7 of the World Series. The Toronto Blue Jays sure did perform magnificently over the course of the series, though. So we're going to touch on that a bit with a new poem that was penned by BC spoken word artist Shane Coyson. So you'll hear that coming up at 12:55. Right now it is 12:30 and time for that CBC News Update. Here now is Taranjeet Parmar.
Good afternoon. The BC Coroner Service says 158 people died in September from unregulated drug toxicity. According to the agency, the highest number of unregulated drug deaths have been in the Fraser and Vancouver coastal health authorities so far this year. The cities experiencing the highest number of deaths have been Vancouver, Surrey, and Greater Victoria. Fentanyl and similar drugs continue to be the most common substance detected. Premier David Eby has decided to pause the province's plan to roll out anti-tariff ads focused on the softwood lumber industry. Eby spoke following a meeting about softwood lumber with federal ministers, including Dominic LeBlanc, the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade. The decision comes after U.S. President Donald Trump broke off trade talks with Canada because of Ontario's anti-tariff ad. Eby and LeBlanc announced a task force to respond to punishing U.S. tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber, which have now reached 45%. An avian flu has been detected at a poultry farm in Salmon Arm. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the discovery was made on Saturday. There is no word yet on the number of birds infected. Province-wide, there are 15 locations affected by avian flu. Those are your news headlines. For more information, you can go to the website anytime, cbc.ca/BC.
Taranjeet, thank you very much. That is Taranjeet Parmar from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. We're live on Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming as well. And thanks for joining us on TikTok. And you can certainly leave your comment there too. Taking your emails, bctoday@cbc.ca. Premier David Eby said today he came out confident after talks with federal leaders when it comes to Ottawa's commitment to prioritizing BC forestry. And here now is Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
Obviously, softwood lumber continues to be something that we had been raising with the Americans. And I committed to the Premier, obviously, that we would work with him and colleagues when and if those negotiations resume in the short term to ensure that we're buckled up. At the same time, as the Premier said, we're not going to wait because the hour is grave, the moment is serious for us to continue to work together and to adjust and to increase the supports that the province and the government of Canada can put in place together to support the sector and the women and men who work in British Columbia and in every part of the country in this important industry. This is a critical industry to the fabric of the whole country. We see British Columbia, of course, as a dominant player in Canada in this industry. That's why we thought it was important for us to hear directly from the Premier, from his government.
That's Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Some emails on this too. Scott writes from Burnaby, BC keeps getting hammered by U.S. lumber tariffs. Here's a simple idea. Instead of selling all our wood the old way, mills could sell a subscription. Buyers pay up front to access wood at a steady, fair price. Thank you very much, Scott. We have been asking you this hour here on BC Today, are you satisfied with what's being done for forestry amid 45% to U.S. tariffs and duties? And how can the industry come out of this intact? You can call us now. Our numbers again, 604-669-3733 or 1-800-825-5950. You can also just hit pound 690. Our email again is bctoday@cbc.ca, and we are watching your comments on TikTok. And Conrad is joining us now from the interior at Princeton. Hi, Conrad. Hi, Conrad, are you there? I can hear Conrad, but I think he is not listening to us at the moment. Let's move on. Conrad, if you're there, I will come back to you later on. But Casey is joining us now from Furney. Let's go southeast. Hi, Casey.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you so much for calling in. Yeah, how do you feel?
I feel enraged, I guess, would be a fair word to use. The industry spokesperson asking for more deregulation is just so predictable. Unfortunately, the industry has long captured the BC government, the regulator in this province, and we continue to clear-cut old-growth forests at a completely unacceptable level. There shouldn't be any clear-cutting of old-growth forests. The vast majority of British Columbians agree that should be the case. And the BC government needs to implement the old-growth strategic review that was done more than 5 years ago now, as they have committed to do. They are not doing that. The forest industry is widely recognized as unsustainable and a net greenhouse gas producer, not a risk sequesterer. And while destroying watersheds and making floods and fires worse, they continue on with business as usual, which is not okay. Mechanization has caused way more job losses than any environmental protection or regulation.
And so, Casey, when it comes to weathering the storm that is the U.S. tariffs, how do you think those environmental practices can help with that, with ensuring that the industry is sustainable in the future?
Yeah, well, I guess for me, it's more about stopping the mining of our forests and the destroying of our watersheds, and more protecting what we need to protect, which is fire resilience and flood resilience and climate adaptation and greenhouse gas sequestration that old growth and intact forests provide for us, and not subsidizing the industry by giving away. And I don't agree necessarily with the U.S. softwood lumber industry's, unfair subsidy claim, but the stumpage that is given to these companies or charged to these companies for this, nature's gift to us, these multiple 100-year-old trees that they get to cut down and mine, because replacing those stands with anything like what they're destroying is completely meaningless in terms of a human timescale, is what we need to stop doing. And think about, and I just love what the gentleman was talking about, his daughter figuring out a value-add business from the scraps from the lumberyard. And, there's just been not nearly enough of that in terms of, actually applying ingenuity and adding value to our industry rather than shipping raw logs to the U.S. and to other buyers, which is continuing to this day. We ship raw logs out of this province without adding any value to them, or we do minimal processing and turn them into dimensional lumber, which is the lowest bar that we could, achieve.
Okay. Casey, thank you so much for the call. That's Casey in Furney. And right now, let's turn to James Furney, who is mayor of Port McNeill, or northern Vancouver Island, as certainly a major hub for forestry and logging in BC. Mayor Furney, thanks very much for taking our call.
Oh, delighted to join you today.
What do you make of what you heard from the Premier today, a new task force to look at supports for forestry?
Well, we're delighted to have any attention at all out of Victoria, and more so out of Ottawa. So let's say we're traditionally skeptical, but we'd be delighted to participate somewhat in a newer path for the struggles that we all face collectively.
Can you tell me more about how these tariffs have been impacting your community, and certainly the overall downturn in forestry as well? What has that been like for Port McNeill?
We're feeling it. It's, we're a very forest-dependent area, and despite what Casey from Furney observes in the world, it's not quite the doom and gloom that he has witnessed. And I'd invite him to Port McNeill anytime, and I'll take him for a good tour of the best-managed forest in the world. So no hesitation there.
Okay.
Port McNeill, we've benefited very well on Vancouver Island from decades of really solid forest management. Where we run into the issues, and it's not purely a Donald Trump issue, it is the ideology that comes from Victoria when it comes to allowing us to actually work.
So you're saying there is too much regulation?
I'd say there is a ridiculous level of regulation at this juncture. The rest of the world doesn't function like we do, and not solely in forestry, but in Canada, we are so tripping over ourselves with regulation that we have made ourselves very uneconomic. The result of that being that the major investors in the U.S. wood sector are Canadian now. They're done with Canada. There is no more investment coming into our area from our own country. They are finding far, far better economies south of the border.
Casey's point, though, is that these forests are needed, right, for a sustainable future. And there has been criticism of the industry in terms of lacking when it comes to value-added products, and whether there is some minimal production or added processing, it's still lacking when it comes to that. And so that just contributes to that lack of sustainability. I mean, what about the accountability on the industry itself in ensuring that it is sustainable for the future?
Great point. And BC has been a net importer of raw logs for many decades. We bring in the majority of the Alaskan wood, comes into the mills in British Columbia. So to say that we're a grand exporter isn't really the fact. And every piece of wood that does leave our country has been already offered to local producers, and for whatever reason may be, they don't find it economical. So it's not, a free-for-all of export, as Casey points out.
What do you hope comes out of the task force that's now being put together?
Well, something tangible. We are, to say the least, skeptical of another Ottawa task force. I think we've seen fisheries managed from Ottawa that has devastated both of our coasts, although I'm sure the Rideau River in Ottawa is fabulously well managed. So we want to see some deliverables, because sentiment without action is the ruin of the soul. And I do fear we will not get to the stage of actual deliverables from the task force. But like any good Canadian sports fan, I'm very comfortable to live in a land of hope.
It doesn't sound like you share the optimism that Premier David Eby expressed today.
I don't share much with David Eby other than a love for Port McNeill. But no, I admire him. He is trying. I tip my hat to his forest minister. I truly believe their heart is in the right place. They may be a little bit late to the game, but I'm delighted that we're talking about this on a Monday afternoon on the nation's broadcaster. So that does do me some good. But Mr. Eby and I will probably not see eye to eye on the future of forestry, and that's fine. But I'm happy with what they've done today. The Forest Summit is a great nod to the industry.
Mayor Furney, it's good to talk to you today as well. Thank you for your time.
If I can add one thing, they're going to end up trying to push towards a lot of training. And what the federal government did with their curtailment of international students has really hit the small region colleges in an attempt to genetically modify downtown Vancouver and Toronto student populations. They've really taken the industry of training out at the knees. So areas like ours that rely on North Island College particularly are really struggling.
You rely on international students?
Absolutely, we do, yes. Half of the students have been cut out of the North Island in the last year. So we need those schools to be viable, and a big part of that is the international student sector.
Okay, we'll follow up on that as well. Mayor Furney, thank you again for your time.
Thanks so much. All the best.
You too. That's James Furney, Mayor of Port McNeill, and we reached him today in Campbell River. Let's take some more of your calls now, asking you if you're satisfied with what you've heard today, or what's being done for the forest industry, and how do you think the industry can come out of these tariffs intact. Renee is on the line in Victoria now, and our number again, if you'd still like to call us, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. And Renee, thanks very much for your call. What are your thoughts?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Well, my thoughts are that I agree wholeheartedly with what Casey had to say. This industry has been so mismanaged. It's boom and bust. It always has been. I was a forest technologist up in Terrace, the Skeena region. I worked all over there, Haida Gwaii, and I have never seen such bad forest management. It is totally unsustainable the way it's been managed, and that is, it's not up to the companies. They are just there for their shareholders, And speaking of the softwood lumber thing, that what the big companies did before when they got money back, they invested all their money that they got back into Georgia, the States, because they know darn well that they have cut everything. They have raped and pillaged this province. There is nothing left that's accessible and economically to harvest. So, yeah, of course they're going to go down there, and they're fleeing the province. It leaves the communities that are forest dependent, and Terrace was one of them, where I lived for 27 years. We had 2 mills gone. Those mills were gone. They have just over-harvested. So it's those forest-dependent communities, and I would say to the mayor of Port McNeill, it's very important. The regulations, there isn't enough of them, because that's what makes the industry sustainable and not preventing a boom and bust thing like what's been happening. And unfortunately, the mayors and all the people in the industry, they're always let's get rid of all the regulations. Let's cut. Well, it's a renewable resource, for heaven's sakes. It's more than just a bunch of sticks to be processed. They provide clean air. I mean, we need our forests for functioning ecosystems, for flood control, and nobody gets this except, in the industry, they don't care. They're only accountable to their shareholders. They don't give a rat's ass.
Well, so now we have, Renee, this, the urgency, right? This crisis that's being faced by the industry itself, and it needs help, and it seems to be getting that help.
Because there's nothing to cut. What are they going to need help with? Cut what's the little scraggly things that are left? Cut the rest of our old growth? Go into our parks?
So do you worry that that
They have made
sustainability
their own
argument
crisis.
is falling by the wayside then, as we talk about the urgency faced by the industry?
Well, the urgency that they produce the urgency. They cut way too much. They're greedy, and they don't care.
Okay,
So
Renee?
I'm against subsidizing these. They're just robbers of our economy.
Renee, thank you so much for the call. Certainly two very distinct opinions that we're hearing, right, on the show today. It's a debate we've heard for many years when it comes to forestry in BC, but certainly hearing it now in light of the tariff challenges faced by forestry and what seems to be coming from the federal government when it comes to this new task force today anyway. Paige is calling us now from Rossland. Hi, Paige.
Hey there, how's it going?
Really well, thank you. What are your thoughts? Are you satisfied with what you're hearing when it comes to addressing the challenges of the forest industry?
I'm generally unsatisfied. I've worked in a branch of forestry called silviculture for the last 18 years. And since I've begun this job, I have heard over and over again how important it would be to diversify to other buyers, countries, whomever, to keep our forest products going and to keep our jobs secure. And these tariffs have existed for quite a long time. And we've had plenty of time to deal with this, and we haven't. And
countervailing
we are now
duties,
to call it a crisis now. Exactly. We're calling it a crisis now, but it's kind of been a problem for quite some time. So we've had decades to have figured out and done a better job of this, and we have failed to do so. And it affects a lot of people's jobs, a lot of people's wages, and it'll be a kind of trickle-down economics that we're not going to like to feel the effects of in a bad way.
And are you driving on a logging road today?
Yes, I actually just came from a cut block. I was burning slash piles. And while there may be complaints of waste and whatnot, the big part of this whole entire industry right now is it's going to affect people, and people are number one. And it's unfortunate that we haven't found a way to deal with this better, economically and environmentally.
Paige, really good to hear from you. Thank you so much. That's Paige in Rossland. Let's come back to the Lower Mainland now. And Jane is joining us from Vancouver. Your thoughts on what's being done for forestry, Jane? Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm not a real speaker. I'll just start blabbing. So the free trade agreement, I challenge every Canadian to read that agreement. I think it's an opportunity right now. We had this opportunity when Justin was in power, and I think we have it again, where we really need to consider what that means to Canadians. From when I looked at it back when I was in high school, it didn't look good. It tied Canadians into selling our resources at a really low cost and not necessarily matching inflation. And then regardless of any environmental disaster, we would have to pay gobs of money to the States if we wanted to make any ratification of that deal. And I think we really need to consider if we even want that deal anymore. Like it's our chance. We could get out of it now.
The CUSMA agreement that's slated to be the CUSMA agreement, the new NAFTA, essentially, right? That's what you're referring to.
Yeah. Like we have children, and we have our children's children and their children, and forever to consider. And the way things have been going, it's all to feed this industry. We really need to look at what industry means for us as people, and not just shareholders and workers for a paycheck. We really need to consider what a tree means in a forest, and what that might mean standing. Like relook at our whole system. It's time right now. We're at a crisis worldwide, and I think it's just time for a churning. Like we have systems that were working for a while, and we all benefit from them in some way. Also, it's time for radical change. So I love this program. I love that we can come together and think of really big ideas and share them, and and even when they don't make sense, to make sense of things that we wouldn't expect. And I really appreciate, I think that the communication is essential, because we can't rely on industries. This has been proven. We don't have a safe paycheck anymore. And we need to think of our grandchildren. And my other point is that, you can buy and sell shares on gold that's still in the ground. So until somebody wants that tree, we don't need to cut it down. I love that caller's idea where they could pay in advance. So that gives up people to pay for like that they want their tree in 20 years. That tree could live for another 20 years.
The subscription model. Jane, I'm going to jump in here because we have some other callers waiting. Okay, but thank you very much. Really good to hear from you. And you were able to express yourself. She said earlier that she's not a talker, but she certainly was able to give her point. John up in Mackenzie now. Hi, John.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing. What are your thoughts on what's being done for forestry?
Well, it's a difficult situation. I'm getting old now. I was 23 years ago. I got to knock heads with Pat Bell, our forestry minister here in Mackenzie, when Abitibi had been bought out by the United States at about 30 cents on the dollar. And tariffs were on, and I asked him what he was planning on doing with the market crash in the United States, and their companies wanted to buy our companies out. And he said he didn't know what would I do. And I said to him at the time, I said, well, I think I'd take a junket with our Canadian companies that are working in British Columbia, China, because they have a lot of earthquakes and they lose a lot of people with earthquakes. And our lumber is going to be valuable in the future. So, of course, he took Canfor to China and sold 10 years worth of timber production for British Columbia. And
do you think we need to pursue the same thing right now?
But he had to change the building code in China to do that. And it's funny, here we are 23 years later, and as one of your people had said that they were speaking, they said that we're now $9 billion in sales. But we are now facing the same thing. Unfortunately, Canfor moved all their mills and all their super mills out of British Columbia, basically, to the United States, because there's a lot of pine that grows fast there. So, of course, yes, it's a big challenge to get new markets because there are new building codes and things to be done. And hats off to Pat Bell back in 2002 to have taken it on. He laughed and said he only had to just steal my good idea later when it all got done. But he came up with what had to be done as a forestry minister.
John, interesting to bring it. Thank you very much. Interesting to bring it right back around to what we're facing today. But as you say, that challenge of what it means to diversify and try and get into new or renewed markets for our lumber as well. Remember Pat Bell. Thank you very much for your call, John, from Mackenzie. This is BC Today here on CBC. Lots of emails on this too. Douglas writes from Dragon Lake, the last thing about the short rotation corporate industrial fiber mining capture of BC's forests need are more subsidies. We need a new Forest Act. Complete tenure redistribution away from the corporations that have decimated our forests and communities. Maureen writes from Oliver, I agree with Casey wholeheartedly. We need to stop cutting down old growth and basically giving it away. And an email here from Sharon at Lake Country. Canada needs to take a lesson from the Blue Jays. Stay united and work as a team. And a win for one is a win for all. We shall overcome. We have what it takes. And that is an email from Sharon. And Jordan writes as well, I would suggest a restructuring of the industry to expand the community forest model so that proceeds are put back into local communities and away from massive corporations in which profits go to shareholders, not directly connected to the forests from which the profits are drawn. Local organizations and workers are motivated to care for the forests better and aim for sustainability for the longevity of the industry. Thank you very much for your emails. Lots of them coming in. Again, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. It's now just about 12:57. Now, if you are still nursing Game 7 wounds, you're most certainly not alone. It does feel like the entire country is still processing the Toronto Blue Jays' devastating loss on Saturday night with the LA Dodgers capturing the World Series title. I have been on the same journey. I hopped on that bandwagon for sure. I learned so much about the sport of baseball and enjoyed every minute of it. Well, until the extra innings on Saturday. But we let the loss sink in, we remember the highs, and we think of the future. And here's some help now from BC spoken word artist Shane Koizen. After Game 7, he posted a poem called Good Sports for the Toronto Blue Jays. And this morning, he joined Gregor Craigie on CBC's Victoria Morning Show on the island.
All right, good sports. Our country is bilingual. We know two languages, heartbreak and hope. We know how to say almost and make it sound like next time. Even now, your fans applaud through the ashes. So keep your shoulders straight and carry the weight of next season's maybe. You didn't lose. You reminded us that joy this heavy is worth the risk, and that every swing that comes one breath short of a miracle is worth the hope.
Worth the hope. That's BC poet Shane Koizen. Really.